Good evening, I'm Lonnie Ray Wills, the producer of the documentary series Changing Times-The Spartanburg I Know. I'd like to welcome everyone to the 2025 Black Excellence Awards, commemorating Black History Month and Cynthia Reed Wills Day in the city of Spartanburg. Coming to Spartanburg for more than 30 years, I was inspired by all the stories I've heard of the changing times in this city. Last year, we spotlighted 22 outstanding citizens, and this year, we've added 10 more extraordinary citizens to spotlight in the city of Spartanburg.
Hi, I'm James Talley, first African-American elected to City Council in the city of Spartanburg, and also the first African-American to be elected mayor in the city of Spartanburg. And for that, I'm forever grateful to the citizens of Spartanburg. On the first commemoration of the Black Excellence Program, it was my honor to be the first Black Excellence Award honoree. And at that time, it showed the legend and the life of a person living in Spartanburg that rose to be the mayor. Thanks to Cynthia and Lonnie Wills for their participation and for the work that they've done. This was done in commemoration also of the Cynthia Reed Wills Day in the city of Spartanburg, the Black History Month, along with Wofford College and the other groups that are participating. I want to say congratulations to those who have been selected now. It's a great honor, and we owe a great deal of credit to Cynthia and Lonnie for their tireless work. They didn't have to do it, but they did. And the amazing thing is, they enjoyed doing it. So congratulations to all of the nominees, the electees, and all of the people that this program touches.
My name is Dr. Dwayne Pruitt, Chief Equity Officer and Vice President for Community Initiatives at Wofford College. On behalf of Wofford College and in commemoration of Black History Month and Cynthia Reed Wills Day, I would like to congratulate this year's Black Excellence Award honorees in collaboration with No Budget Films and the Unlimited Arts of Dallas.
Good evening. I'm Jerome Rice, Mayor of the city of Spartanburg, South Carolina. In commemorations of Black History Month and Cynthia Reed Wills Day, in honor of our citizens that have shown the future how to live and how to thrive, it is my pleasure to honor you on this day. The collaboration with No Budget Films, Unlimited Arts of Dallas, and Wofford College is designed to celebrate the accomplishments of the outstanding citizens here in Spartanburg. I want to personally thank you as the mayor of Spartanburg. As I tell everyone, Spartanburg is my home. Every decision I make about Spartanburg is in the best interest of my home. And the decision to congratulate you on this evening is in the best interest of our home. Thank you and congratulations. Have a great evening.
I present to some and introduce to others the 2025 Black Excellence Award honorees, starting with Theodore Strawberry Williams, who in 2012 was inducted into the Amateur Softball Association Hall of Fame.
My name is Theodore Strawberry Williams. I was inducted in the Hall of Fame October 18th, 2012, and I really enjoyed it. And everywhere I go, I have kids that come up to me, which now probably 45 years old or older, saying they remember me. They were a bat boy, and I can't remember them. It's all in the paper. All you got to do is say, Strawberry ASA Hall of Fame. Or you can say Theodore Williams, ASA Hall of Fame. Don't care where you at, my name will come up.
Geraldine Fuller Mack, first Miss Black Spartanburg in 1975.
The Spartanburg I Know is a Spartanburg that was good to me. Regardless of all the ups and downs that most people may think that they have because either they don't have money, they don't live in a big house, or what have you. I married and stayed married and am still married, been married for 48 years. Spartanburg has been good to me. It's been good to me, it's been good to my family. And there are those people in Spartanburg who, may not feel that same way. But the Spartanburg I know was a good time for me.
Attorney James A. Cheek was the first Black member of the Spartanburg County Bar Association.
I am James Cheek, an attorney. I graduated from the University of South Carolina School of Law in 1977. I became the first Black lawyer to be a member of the Spartanburg County Bar Association. And I wound up coming back to Spartanburg. A lot of people said, why are you coming back to Spartanburg? You can do a whole lot better in other places. I said, yeah, I can do a whole lot better in other places, but Spartanburg would do better because I came home.
Richard E. Worthy, who earned 2 master's degrees and became an architect.
My name is Richard Worthy. I joined the Army in 1965. So after that, I went to Fort Leonard Wood to carpentry school. I'd asked them to teach me drafting. I'm going to grow up and become an architect, and they sent me to carpentry school. I came out of the Army with the GI Bill. I made a plan for myself. I was accepted into Berkeley the spring of 1976 as a junior. I finished in 1985. They told me, no, if we give you 2 master's degrees, you're going to do 2 different theses.
My wife, Cynthia Reed Wills, is an accomplished author and a filmmaker.
My name is Cynthia Reed Wills. I married an abusive man in 1980. I was living out in Los Angeles, California. So after I left Los Angeles, I came home to Spartanburg, running for my life. And my mama, who I love, my mama, she just nursed me back to health. But my brother Mike had moved to Dallas, Texas, and he told me to come out to Dallas. He could find me some work in Dallas. I had been there about 4 years, and I married Lonnie Ray Wills in 1989. Now with him, I got 2 bonus daughters.
Bishop Willie Irvin Jenkins Sr. was an outstanding athlete in high school and a track star. He's still running for Jesus as the pastor of the First Baptist Church of Fair Forest.
My name is Willie Irvin Jenkins Sr. After being licensed to the gospel ministry in 1986, married my wife in 1988. We had our two sons, Willie and Justin, and which are musicians in the church, as well as our grandson, Josh. We have Melita and Jemiah and Gabrielle and Daniel. But becoming the senior pastor at First Baptist Church of Fair Forest, God has allowed us to become a worshiper during these 36 years.
Beverly Spearman Benson is a force to be reckoned with, both as a business owner and a motivational speaker.
Hi, I am Beverly Benson, somewhere around 1983. I wound up moving back to Greenville, and then I got a call about a job at State Farm Insurance. I took that job. The next option was to be an agent. I went for the opportunity, and one gentleman said, "Who would buy insurance from you?" That did it. In Spartanburg, that's where it wound up being, and it has been a very blessed and joyous journey.
Dr. Willie Joe Hill Jr. is a renowned dental physician and an outstanding citizen.
My name is Dr. Willie Joe Hill Jr. I epitomize the essence of the Mahatma Gandhi philosophy. The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. I have served and continue to provide leadership or maintain membership in several professional, civic, military, educational, and religious organizations. I was president of the Palmetto Medical, Dental, and Pharmaceutical Association, a member of the Piedmont District Dental Society, and the Academy of General Dentistry.
Alma Wallace Bird became a member of the NAACP and dedicated her life to serving her community and her country.
My name is Alma Louise Wallace. Now, I have a street named after me called Alma Bird Lane. I had to go through channels to get that lane, done many things there for the neighborhood, and I let it be known that if I'd done that much work, I could have a street named after me. So, in 2009, they named Summer Place Alma Bird Lane. B-Y-R-D, no feathers.
What was hard for most people was easy for Willie Worthy. He had a successful career in the New York healthcare system before moving back to Spartanburg after he retired.
I'm Willie Worthy. While I was at Livingstone, I joined the Omega Psi Phi fraternity. I graduated from Livingstone with a degree in science, and I graduated from Long Island University with a master's degree in public administration in 1983. And when I came back to Spartanburg, and I decided that I wanted to be active again, and because my age, the brothers take turns taking me to the meetings, even if all I do is give them, as they said, the wisdom of the age.
I'd like to thank Wofford College and Dr. Dwayne Pruitt for partnering with us to present this documentary series, Changing Times, The Spartanburg I Know. The Spartanburg Public Libraries for all they've done for us. My wife, Cynthia Reed Wills, for her tireless effort in making this documentary series a success. And the 2025 Black Excellence Award honorees for their participation.
I am Willie Worthy, and I was born in Spartanburg, July of 1936. My parents was James Worthy and Adame Lyles, and my sister and brothers consisted of John Jr. My third brother was John Earl, my sister Rosa Jean. From Rosa Jean, there was Richard Worthy, there was Carolyn, Lynetta, and Trudy. We were all kids who were fairly close together, and we did a lot for each other. The love in the family was obvious to all of us, and we always kept that foremost in mind. Our parents were strictly disciplinary and would not brook fooling around. Whippings were normal and often.
My name is Alma Louise Wallace. I was born in Inman, South Carolina, March 1939, to the parents of Odell Wallace and Grace Wallace. My mother had 10 children. The first one was Odessa, Earl Dean, myself, Jeanette, Mary Ann, Hessie Rebecca, John Warford, Samuel, Janice, and O'Neill. My grandmother raised us mostly because my mother was at work, and we lived with her until I was 10 years of age. We lived in a gunshot house with my grandmother. I think they paid like $2.50 a week. I remember taking the money to the office to pay for the rent. We didn't have running water. We had a spigot that was for the whole neighborhood. And we didn't have bathrooms, we had outdoor toilets.
My name is Willie Joe Hill Jr. I was born in Waterloo, South Carolina, May 1944. Waterloo is the home of my grandparents. My parents lived in Spartanburg. I grew up in the summers in the country and during school time in the city. So I had a little taste of everything. I know that chocolate milk didn't come from chocolate cows. I am the oldest of 6 children. My parents, Willie Joe Hill Sr., and my mother, Otis Griffin Hill. There were 5 boys in our family, my brothers and I, and 1 sister, Emily Hill Monroe now. Brother next to me was Ronnie Hill. Next to him was Archie Hill. Next to him was Alan Hill, and my baby brother, Michael Hill. I, for a long time, was the smallest of all of them, but I was the boss, though. I was the boss.
Hi, Richard Worthy. I was born in St. John's Alley, December 1945. My parents, James and Ida Worthy. My siblings, Willie, James, John, Rosa, me, Patricia, Carolyn, Lynetta, and Trudy. There were so many of us that it was incredible. I thought my father was one of my brothers. Didn't even need neighbors, but we had plenty of them. But in St. John's Alley, my father had horses and cows. When it became a city and no longer a town, they forced him to get rid of that. So he moved to Highland. They made it into the city. He had to get rid of his cow again. We could go anywhere that we wanted to go in Spartanburg, as long as when it got to be dusk dark and our mom came to the door and called for us, we were in earshot. If not, you knew she was going to kill you.
My name is Theodore Strawberry Williams. I was born in 1947, Spartanburg, South Carolina. My mother's name was Savannah Bobo Williams, and my father was Curtis Big Jip Williams. They had 11 kids, had 3 girls, 7 boys, and 1 adopted boy. We lived in Highland, which was a good neighborhood. Peoples in Highland, they always took care of each other. When they're hungry, they fed them. They looked out for everybody. In that Highland section, when you come to Highland, you see peoples like, you ask, it's gonna be the Bobos, the Williams, the Corns, the Tapes, but everybody took care of one another. We played marbles, and we get mad at each other, we'll fight, but we loved each other. We'll shake hands, probably fight again.
I am James Cheek, an attorney, and this is the Spartanburg I Know. Being born here, the son of Arthur Earl and Myrtle Jackson Cheek in the 1950s. I recall very, very briefly as an infant living in the Highland community, what was called then Brush Street. After that, we went to Philadelphia for a short period of time, but then returned to the Spartanburg that I know. Of Phyllis Goins Court, the second family to move into public housing, Phyllis Goins, when it was erected. After that, my family moved to Woodview Avenue in the Forest Park, Duncan Park area.
My name is Cynthia Reed Wills, and I was born May 1954 in Richmond, Virginia. But I was only born there because my mother and father moved right back to Spartanburg when I was just a baby. So all I've ever known is living in Spartanburg. Now, my mama's name was Pearlie Williams, and she married my daddy, James Reed, and they had 6 children. The oldest was Phyllis, then it was Chris, Mike, then me, Wayne, and Deb. And we lived all together, even with our cousins, in my granddaddy's house in Arkwright. So it was a very different life, but it was a wonderful life. Being so close to family and growing up with my family. Now, we lived in Arkwright, which was a very rural area on the outskirts of Spartanburg. And it was not a segregated neighborhood. There were black people and white people because we lived right near the Arkwright Mill, or as a lot of people said, we lived on Mill Hill. And so we were surrounded by very, very prejudiced, very, very mean white people. And it was just a very bad time. I remember it so well because my granddaddy, Jim Williams, owned his own land. My granddaddy bought an acre of land as an African-American man. That was so special. And I actually saw the deed, and he paid a little bit more than $200 for an acre of land. And so we were different. We owned our own land. The Spartanburg I Know, Geraldine Mack, born, scene 1, take 1.
I was born November 1955. I was born in Spartanburg County in Pauline Walnut Grove. It's right down below Roebuck. My mother raised 7 children. I am one of the last 3 children. My mother had me at 40, and she had my twin sisters at 42. And we basically lived like, I guess you'd say, sharecroppers. We lived on a plot of land where my mother did the domestic work for what I call the big house. And she cooked breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and there were sheep on that property. And my sisters and I and my brother, we herded sheep and we walked down this dirt road to catch the bus. My mother was a very strong woman, very, very strong, but she was a strong, silent type. I loved her dearly. She lived to be 91 years old.
Hi, my name is Beverly Benson. My birth date is 1956. It is what it is. I was born in Greenville, South Carolina. My parents were the late Holly and Joe K. Spearman. I had some good parents, y'all. They're gone now, but I miss them every day. My siblings, I have one brother that's deceased. His name was Melvin, and he was just the light of my life. They said we looked a lot alike, and so he was my heart. Right now, I have remaining 2 brothers and a sister. My sister is the youngest girl. I'm older than she is, and she is spoiled rotten. I just want to get that out of the way. Anybody who knows us knows that Veronica is one spoiled chickie diva. We call her V. My brothers, Christopher and Derek, they're just great. We have always gotten along really well. Because after my brother passed, I was the oldest, and I was bossy, and I still am bossy, and being the oldest, they allowed me to be bossy. Crazy and or bossy. That was me. I remember my grandma's house. I remember playing outside. At that time, it was just me and my older brother and my aunts and cousins. We were all pretty close in age. We'd play outside all day long. We would eat fruit that was at my grandma's house. She had a fig tree. So we had the figs, we had cherries, and we had this stuff called sweetgrass. I don't remember exactly how you could find it. I always made my aunt find it for me. My Aunt Janie, she found it, and it was just sweet. And honeysuckles. I remember pulling honeysuckles off of the branch, vine, whatever it was, and inhaling that little sweet taste. It was good. It was good. My grandma had a garden, and it was so funny because the deal was either you worked out in the garden or you cleaned the house. So I would clean up the whole house if I could stay inside. That was my thing. But she also wanted us to learn everything, so you couldn't just clean the house from time to time. I had to get out there in the garden.
My name is Willie Irvin Jenkins Sr. I was born January of 1963. I was the youngest of 12 siblings. We grew up in a place called East Spartanburg. We used to run and jump and play on the softball field and play horseshoes, and just remember having a fun time growing up. Summertime, we never wanted to come into the house. We always wanted to stay outside and play and just enjoy life. I grew up in East Spartanburg to two wonderful parents. My dad's name was Walter Jenkins, and my mother's name was Nellie Lee Jenkins. My sisters and my brothers, there was Willie Jr., my oldest brother, there was Dorothy Lee, there was Sharon, there was Geraldine, there was Leroy, Doug, there was Dooney, there was Linda and Brenda, and there was Dolores and Annie, and then came Irvin. I was the youngest of all of the 12. Growing up, they taught us, most of all, to say yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am. And we were so grateful for that because we didn't have a whole lot growing up. We had a lot of love, but I didn't know we were poor. We had pinto beans, black-eyed peas, and I remember eating the chicken back butt. That's all I knew of the chicken.
I went to the Golden Street Kindergarten, which was behind Converse College. It was operated by a white Presbyterian, Mr. Garnell, who had a bald head. And when we laughed at his bald head, he thought it was a good joke. I went from nursery school to Alexander Elementary School, also called Dean Street School. From that school, I remember the teachers. My first grade teacher was Miss Lyons. The second grade teacher was Miss Carson. The third grade teacher was Miss Brown. Miss Rivers was the fifth grade teacher, and Miss Sexton was a fifth grade teacher. We all went then to Cumming Street School, where we walked from Dean Street all the way over to Cumming Street. I remember in Cumming Street, the principal was a guy named Mr. Rivers. And Mr. Rivers stood by the door with his leather strap. And if you weren't in there at 9 o'clock, hold out your hand and take two good ones. You can believe it was an incentive to be on time. Having moved from St. John Alley to 113 Gibson Street in Holland, I was then transferred to Holland School.
My elementary schooling was at Ben Boma School there in Inman. The first Ben Boma school burned. My mother attended that school, and we had the same first grade teacher. At that school, we didn't even have lunch. We did have bathrooms there, and the classes were doubled. In my first grade class, it was just a single first grade class, but in the second grade class, it was second and third grade. And in the next grade, it was still like fourth and fifth grade. It just doubled, and sometimes it'd be triple. My sixth grade class was held in the Masonic Temple across from the Ben Boma School. Now in that building, we did not have running water, no bathrooms, no water to drink. We did have a coal stove. All of my schooling was by a coal stove.
I went to elementary school at Dean Street. Elementary School, or the formal name for it was Alexander Elementary School. I went there for 4 years. The principal for all of my years in elementary school was Mrs. Copeland. My first grade teacher was Mrs. Woodson, the wife of a principal, Mr. Woodson. First grade was very good. I enjoyed school. I enjoyed going to school. In, I think, first grade, that was when I really started listening to songs that we learned, the Pledge of Allegiance, all of that.
Started to kindergarten at Bethlehem Center. My elementary school was Highland. My first grade, I was as big as everybody else, and so the first day, I had a fight with everybody in the class. The second year, they were all bigger than me. So I said, I have to get smart real quick. The second grade teacher, for some reason, I couldn't pronounce it. I pronounced it as IT, ot. And she got frustrated with me, jumped on me, beat me up all down underneath the desk. I went home and told my mom. She said the teachers can do anything, anything. And my father and mom had separated at this time, and I had no one to protect me. I went back to school and I disappeared. If you called on me, I'd cover myself up so that you couldn't hurt me. Okay, and I heard nothing. I said nothing. I would not talk or anything. In the 5th grade, Mrs. Bennett called on me. She came back and put her nose on my nose and looked in my eyes, and she said, I'm not going to hurt you. And for the first time, I became conscious in elementary school. I looked around, and there was all the people that I started school with. I hadn't seen them at all. In the 6th grade, I had Mrs. Wells. She was a great teacher.
I went to 3 kindergartens. I went to Moon's Kindergarten, which was behind Macedonia Baptist Church, which they call it Sims Alley. I went to Thompson Street Kindergarten. That was a church. And also, I finished up at Bethlehem Kindergarten before I started the 1st grade at Highland School. I went 6 grades in Highland School. From 6th grade, we also, when we got out of school, we went to Bethlehem Center. And we was there every day. Bethlehem Center always had something for us to do. And we started off playing baseball, like 10 years old, for actually Bethlehem Center. And we wasn't about 11 years old then, but we all played good ball in Highland.
My sister, Marguerite, is now Marguerite Cheek Fant. She's married to a gentleman from Spartanburg. And Marguerite and I both went to Mary H. Wright Elementary School. I was blessed to have some very, very fine teachers. I remember Miss Peggy Clark, whose husband was a band director, Carver, gave me an opportunity to be on stage and to sing a solo. Mr. Hudson L. Barksdale, who was my 6th grade teacher, he was told me that I would be a great citizen, and then he made certain that I received the American Legion Award for school citizenship, and it was just a great experience for me. I was blessed at the end of my 6 years there to be able to sing with the choir, although I didn't think I had a great voice.
Now, when school started, we had moved to Piedmont Street, which that's the south side. We moved over to Piedmont Street, right across from the apartments that Phyllis going, and that was a great time. I went to 1st grade at Mary H. Wright, and I still remember my teacher, Miss Funches, and she was just the best teacher. Mike had her the year before me, and I just love Miss Funches because she always smells so good. Nobody had a lot of colognes and perfumes, and so every time she'd walk by, she smelled so good. And I just love Miss Funches, and she taught us everything, and she was such a great teacher. And then I went there in the second grade. But when my Grandma Lily, when she passed away, we moved back to Arkwright so that we could be with Granddaddy. And that's when we had to be bused to Cummins Street. And so the buses would pick us up and take us to the north side of town, which was as far as I'd probably ever been as a little girl. We went to church on the north side, but Cummins Street was just so wonderful. We had wonderful teachers. Everything was so great. I loved Cummins Street School. And so I stayed there until I got to the 6th grade.
But from that time, our interests moved on. I attended Foster's Chapel Elementary School from grade 1 to grade 6. And during that time, during elementary school, I didn't think anything was wrong with it. We were poor people. We were poor girls. We were farmers. We were sheep herders. I have no shame about any of that. My mother did the best, and her best, believe it or not, was definitely enough. And from there, when my brother joined the Navy, he vowed that he was going to move my mother, Helen Fuller, from that farmland, and we moved. We moved at 12 o'clock midnight on a cardboard box truck, one of those big trucks that carry cardboards. And she didn't think we were ever going to move. She says, "Oh, they're not coming. And down that road he came with one of my brother-in-laws, my sister's husband. And he had that big old truck. And we packed up our boxes and we moved to the big city of Spartanburg. And at that point in time, that's where I started singing. Started singing at Mount Pleasant Baptist Church. That was our home church. And even though my mother raised all 7 of us without my father had 7 other children. And believe it or not, my father, his wife, and my mother, they all got along in that church. They all sat together. So I have 7 sisters and a brother, and I have 7 other sisters and brothers by my father.
Life changed somewhere around 4 or 5 when my father joined the Navy. His first tour of duty was Dunoon, Scotland. I was 5, and I started school in Dunoon, Scotland. You think about being lonely, man, I was the only one that looked like me color-wise and spoke like me with my very southern accent. Very interesting though, starting school at 5 and starting school in a whole nother country. They did things different, and I think they still do. Kids learned a second language from day 1, and they started gymnastics and learning French at 1st grade at age 5. When you went to a different school and people were not exactly like you, they may have been the most wonderful people, but you also felt, and it was live, it was real, it was tangible when we were treated differently because we were different.
I remember starting school in the 1st grade at E.P. Todd Elementary School. And when I went to E.P. Todd, I had a 1st grade teacher by the name of Miss Gravel. I didn't understand a lot about integration and segregation and coming together, going into an all-white school. That's kind of all that I knew because I never went to a black school. But Miss Gravel was very, very kind to me. She was very, very loving towards me, treating me really, really careful and very special, but I didn't understand because I was the only black child in the classroom at that time. But going through that 1st grade and going to the 6th grade, I remember having a teacher by the name of Miss Wheeler. Miss Wheeler, she was very influential, and of course there was a Miss Parks also in the 6th grade. They were black teachers, and of course they always encouraged us to go forth and be the best that you could be.
My 7th and 8th grade classes were 1.5 miles from my home, and I had to walk to school. The roads were not paved, they were muddy, and to walk a paved road would take us out of the way, but sometimes we would go that direction, but we had trouble going that direction because the white people would sick their dogs on us and we would have to run. In the 7th and 8th grade classes there at this building, it was just a block building, but still it was known as Ben Bowman School. We didn't have any lunches there. We did have bathrooms, but we didn't have air conditioning.
I went to Cumming Street Junior High School. They would kind of group you. And I was in Mr. Reagan's class. He had I think about a half a page piece that he wanted me to read. And I remember when I did it, I didn't use the paper, I just memorized it. And I got that kind of training from speeches at church for all of the seasons, the Easter, Christmas. So I got a chance to learn how to memorize certain things. And he was very impressed by that. He really encouraged me and did very well in junior high school.
Went on to Carver High, scared to death. Everyone had said, when you go to Carver, they put you in a barrel with glass in it and roll you down the hill there to the football field. Especially little bitty guys. Well, hell, I had big brothers and they weren't supposed to let stuff like that happen to me. And it didn't, they just did that to scare you. Mrs. Abrams, my 7th grade teacher, she was a major influence for me. In the 9th grade, I met Mrs. Taggart, but Mrs. Taggart, the English teacher, wonderful person that told me I adopted a little boy because of you. And I always told her, Mrs. Taggart, you're too easy on me. And I never tried to be smart. I got beat up in Highland because you think you are something. You know, you're not supposed to think you're anything. I once told a girlfriend, a little bitty girlfriend, I'm somebody, I'm gonna be somebody.
I then went to Carver Junior High School. There we learned who Dr. George Washington Carver was and had to learn some quotes. One in particular was, be ye ever so mindful of the way you treat children in the dawn of life, the dispossessed, the downtrodden in the pit of life, and how you treat the elderly in the sunset of life. Perchance you live long enough, you will have been all three. And it was a convergence of students like Highland Elementary, Mary H. Wright coming together, the people from Cumming Street School, going into the band, learning to march, learning to read music, having wonderful teachers like Mr. Joseph Kempson, Ms. Lulabelle Abrams, teachers who really believed in us. And my 9th grade year, to have an opportunity to be working with the Boys Club, working with the science fairs, that was Carver Junior High School. It was just a wonderful experience at Carver.
Now, when I got to the 6th grade, even though Cumming Street went to the 9th grade, my desire was to go to Carver. Carver was a junior high and a high school, and my desire was to be a Carver Tiger cheerleader. Now, that was just all I ever wanted to be. I didn't care about being anything else. And so my brother played football for Carver. Phyllis had graduated from Carver. And that's all I had ever wanted to be. And so as I was getting ready the summer, I was excited. I was having fun over the summer, just anticipating that I was gonna go to Carver. Mama sat me down and she had gotten a letter in the mail. And incidentally, Mama was a member of the PTA and she was very much an activist. She loved Dr. King and she believed Dr. King and she believed what Dr. King said. So she sat me down and I was, and she talked to me one day and she said, Cindy, you're gonna go to Jenkins. Now, Jenkins Junior High was on the south side. Actually, it was on Church Street. But it was an all-white school. And the kids who lived on Mill Hill went to Jenkins. Now, I'll be honest, I don't even know if I knew anything other than just passing by Jenkins on the way to church every Sunday. And so she said, she was trying to act like she was excited because they had all of the amenities. Each of us would have our own microscope and all these different things that Carver would not have had, because it was separate, but it was never equal. And so Mama said I was going to go to Jenkins. And again, we didn't question our parents. I mean, I couldn't stand up to her and tell her anything. And she was just determined to send me to Jenkins. And I was thinking, Mama, you know these kids are mean. You know these kids are going to hurt me. You know I'm going to have to fight. You know this if I go to that school. This was in 1966. And so as the summer ended, I did everything I could do to try to change her mind. I talked to my big brother, Chris, who was a very authoritative figure in our family. And I talked to him and I said, talk to Mama for me, please. And he was getting ready to go to Vietnam. And he was like, Cindy, things are changing. You're going to have to change. So I couldn't get him to help me, but I just didn't know what else to do. I wrote a book about it. That's how unbelievable that it was. Now, the Little Rock Nine went in 1957. Ruby Bridges went in 1960. But still, things had not changed. And so Mama sent me to Jenkins. To tell you the story of what really happened at Jenkins was unbelievable, because there were 3 African American students there, me included. And every day was tumultuous, just to say it in one word. I was spit on and of course called the N-word every day. I mean, my name, I don't ever remember hearing my name. Nobody called me by my name. And then to be pushed down a flight of stairs, and I had to fight. And I've only had 2 fights in my life, and I lost both of them. So that was a very, very tough time for me. So I went to Jenkins. I went the first year. I managed to pass, but Mama said that I didn't do as well as I had done when I was at Cumming Street. And so she made me stay a second year. Now, the second year was not as bad, because by then, many other African Americans were going there. And so they were starting to come in. Now, it wasn't totally done, but it was coming. It was changing. Times were changing in Spartanburg. And then I went another year. And then when I got in the 9th grade, Mama said I could go to Carver. And I went to Carver Junior High in the 9th grade, and I became a Carver Tiger cheerleader. That was my greatest victory. I still remember the day that I was chosen to be a Carver Tiger cheerleader.
You have to remember, during that time, we were still dealing with segregation. So for District 6 in the country, all the country kids went to Foster's Chapel Elementary School, and it was really a high school. My older sisters went to Lincoln High School, but I went to Foster's Chapel Elementary School. And from there, once we got on that big old cardboard truck and we moved to the big city, it was about time to start junior high school. Junior high school was interesting. Things started moving pretty fast. We lived with my sister and her husband. As a matter of fact, we lived on Howard Street, not far from where Woodward Funeral Home is. I never had a bedroom. I lived in the hallway, 2 sheets front and back, and my mother kept the twins in the bedroom with her because she wanted those babies to be close to her. Junior high school, Jenkins. Junior high school, Cleveland Junior High School, Evans Junior High School. I went to 3 different junior high schools, but there was where I got an opportunity to do my first solo. David Penninger is his name. He gave me the opportunity to sing this little song. The spring rain helps the bushes bud along the garden path. The The summer leaves gives the dusty leaves a most refreshing bath. The fall rain pelts the chestnuts down upon the ground below. The winter rain, I forget. The winter rain is snow.
I remember my Black school experience different than the other experience. Even though the teachers may have been more strict, you still felt like they were connected to you. They looked like you, they looked like your aunts, they looked like your mom, and you trusted them with whatever it was that they said just because of who they were and who you were. I gotta tell you, some of my hardest years were spent in the States. Goose Creek, South Carolina in particular was a hard experience. I was called the N-word probably every day, and not just from students. And one particular experience, when we moved to the 7th grade, the schools were side by side. When we moved to the 7th grade, I remember coming that first day and I was so excited. I met these 2 girls. I remember Dot and Barbara. And I thought, okay, this is gonna be pretty good. The very next day, Dot said, I cannot play with you. My mama told me you were Black. And I'm like, at that time, it was hurtful. And people say, well, why didn't you tell your parents? Why? I think that kids have an innate understanding of what you must do, what you can do, and what cannot be changed.
And then after leaving the 6th grade, I went to Evans Junior High School. At Evans Junior High School, from the 7th grade to the 9th grade there, I didn't really do a whole lot at Evans. And in the 9th grade, that's when I met a wonderful role model by the name of Coach James Talley. And Coach Talley, he taught me how to shuffle my feet, how to run, and how to cut. I was a running back in the 9th grade.
I went from Highland to Carver High as a freshman. I enjoyed high school very much, but the one that I remember best and most is Mr. Barkins, who taught chemistry. Chemistry was a thing that really inspired me to go to college. In
the beginning of my high school years, we finally got to go to a new school, and it was called Mary McLeod Bethune School, a well-known educator who worked in the president's cabinet there in Washington, D.C. She did visit our school, and I was able to sing to her because I was in the chorus, and I sang for her that day. It was such a rough day, people trying to get there on muddy roads, but she came, and we were so glad to know that we were in the presence of someone that was famous. I was in many activities there at the school. I was the student council president. I was on the choir. I was just everywhere in the school like I am now. In my high school, we had a teacher to come in and correct some of the learnings that we had been taught that was so incorrect. I remember one of my classmates misspelling his name, and she had to correct him on that. MRS, we were pronounced as mirrors. My teacher said, how do you twist your tongue to say mirrors? It's Mrs. It was just a lot of things that we learned from her. And I loved typing, and people was always getting me to type for them. Everybody else in the class had the portable typewriters, but she made me learn on an electric typewriter. But during that time, in order to have money, I still had to pick cotton. I had to pick peaches. Cotton still hadn't gone up. $2.50 for 100 pounds, $3. I remember staying out of school one time just to go and pick cotton. I was picking cotton to pay for my books, buy clothing, especially in the summertime when we picked peaches. Now the peaches was 50 cents an hour, or 10 cents a bushel all day long. You had to dress for the weather. When we talk about being hot now, it was always 100 degrees back then. But we made enough money to pay for our books because the school didn't supply our books the whole time that I went to school. We had plays, and I always was the star of the play. We had so much fun. My closest classmates are still living, and we are in our 80s. It was a school to remember. We was just so glad to have a new school and go to the lunchroom and have lunch and have a band. Those things just brought joy to us. We had our trials and tribulation there in school, especially when the buses with the white children on them would pass us when we walking home from school, how they would throw things out the window, spit out the window. There was a lot of things going on that, we just didn't tell the teachers. Was nobody to report to that's going to take up for us. The legend in my family was Trotting Sally. My mother would tell me many stories about him, and it was years before I even saw his picture. She would tell me about how they would be out there washing clothes with a fire around the pot, and Trotting Sally would come along with his instrument, and he was standing out there, be playing that violin, just dancing the whole time he's playing. He never stood still. That's why they call him Trotting Sally. So he dropped his dime into the fire, and he started crying. And they said, "What's wrong with you?" He said, "I dropped my dime." They said, "Well, here, you can have this dime." He danced and danced and danced. "Why are you still crying?" He said, "Because I dropped my dime." He said, "We gave you a dime." "Yeah, but I would have had 2 dimes.
At Carver, I might have been a pretty good student. I was put with a group of kids who seemed to have been in a college-bound way, and some of them got scholarships and that sort of thing. I didn't at that point foresee my going too much further because I didn't have the financial backing and that sort of thing. But there were a few teachers there who encouraged me to try to go to college. So I did what all the other guys were doing, filling out the college applications. I was accepted at most of those schools, so I said maybe there is a way. And my basketball coach, I did make the basketball team my senior year. He gave me a $50 scholarship. I graduated from Carver High School in 1962.
In a little small room there with glass on it, the guys had on white shirts and ties. And they were drawing. Doc, what is that? "Oh, that's mechanical drawing." What happens? And he explained that, someone draws up every house that's built, and the masonry guys build the house. What is the top of that, Doc? Architecture. So that's the top of the construction profession. Yes, I'm going to be an architect, and I can do that. That I was just as smart as all of those other kids. No, those guys over there, they're preparing to go to college. They're taking college. You are going into the professions and becoming a carpenter. You are not going to college. So I went through his mechanical drawing class and graduated 1965. From there, I went into the military.
I was in the 10th grade when we got ready to play fast pitch softball. Played with a little team called the Hawks. It was just a get-up team, but a good organized team. We started playing with Johnny and Caldwell Grocery. I played most of the outfield. Later on that year, we hadn't won no game or nothing. I started practicing pitching, and I pitched the last 3 games, and we won them. And I pitched in the All-Star game, and that's when Curtis Anderson talked to me. He coached the Coca-Cola to get me to play with them. So in 1965, I started playing with the Coca-Cola. We won the championship.
Then we went over to Carver Senior High School, learning to be proud. Our chant was, "Say it loud, we are the Carver High School Tigers." Everywhere we go, people want to know who we are, so we tell them, we are the Tigers, the mighty, mighty Tigers, and we believe that. We wore the garnet and gray proudly. I should never get a white boy coming to me in the hallway and saying, "Where are your teachers? Where are your students?" I said, "They're in the classroom." He said, "But where are the white students?" We said, "Well, we don't have any white students here yet." He said, "I have never been to a school before where everything was so clean and so nice and everybody was doing their work." Said, "Y'all must have a great time here." I said, "We love Carver." I was on the newspaper staff at Carver High School. Said, I wrote an essay, "What Black Power Means to Me." Because of that one article, I was hired as the first Black intern at Spartanburg Herald-Journal. We expanded our horizons, not only in the classroom, but socially. Carver Tigers and the mighty roar of the Tigers, that's what we wanted to be. I was a proud graduate of Carver High School class of 1969, where I was the president of my class.
By the time we finished the 10th grade, the rumors began to swirl that Carver was going to close and that integration was coming and that we were going to have to go to Spartan High. We had always loved our schools. We didn't want to change schools. We just wanted an equal education. And they told us that things were getting ready to change. Finally, Brown versus Board of Education was going to come after being passed way back in 1954. And so that is what happened. And we transferred to Spartanburg High in 1970. The entire school system changed over. Now, Spartanburg was a prototype of integration because Spartanburg was all Black and all white. Many places was not like that, so we were really textbook integration, where we went together like a piece of a puzzle. And it was so clear. It was such a clear transition. I think that Spartanburg is very special in that, even though I didn't know it then, but I do look back on it and it was very special. And so there was kindness, even in the midst of so much hostility. There were little sparks of people saying, white people, saying change has got to come, even in the midst of all of that, because I'd already been to a white school, so I knew what to expect. I was better prepared, I think, than maybe a lot of people, because at least I had already been. So I graduated from Spartanburg High School in 1972. I was one of the superlatives for Spartanburg High School. I was voted best all around. And that to me meant a lot, because in order for us to have gone through all the things I'd gone through, that my classmates would think that I was congenial in that I was able to help and to help other kids to adjust to such a change during those changing times in Spartanburg.
Junior high school was my first music instructor that gave me the opportunity to sing before anybody in front of a big stage. Then I went to high school. Wow, that was a big year. John Mabry, my chorus teacher. Boy, did I not sing at Spartanburg High School. I was president of the choir there. I traveled with the choir. I did the ensembles, and music was a real big part of my life. And at that point, that's when someone said, you might want to be in a beauty pageant. I never thought of myself as a beauty queen. So I decided to enter, believe it or not, the Miss Spartanburg pageant, 1974. Entered it, got a standing ovation, never placed. That was Spartanburg then in 1974. During that time, the Epsilon Nu chapter of the Omega Psi Phi fraternity, a group of Black men said that they were going to take it upon themselves and do the Miss Black America pageant. And they decided to do the Miss Black Spartanburg pageant. I moved from the Miss Spartanburg and went into the Miss Black Spartanburg pageant. The Miss Black Spartanburg pageant was probably the big opening of my life in terms of being able to feel like I'm going to sing, I'm going to do great things. The Epsilon Nu chapter had the director, the mayor of Spartanburg, Mayor James Talley. He was on that committee and he taught all of us girls how to walk in a beauty pageant. We learned how to do quarter turns, we knew how to stand and be poised, and it was just wonderful. Bingo! I won Miss Black Spartanburg. Things started moving real quick at that point. From there, the South Carolina pageant, I won the South Carolina pageant, and then the fraternity realized that I may have a possible opportunity to win the Miss Black America pageant.
I told you that I reconnected with the girls in Dunoon. I almost graduated high school in Scotland. We moved back for my 10th and 11th grade years. And when I went back and I started school, you do not know the joy that I felt when I ran back into those girls and they still looked the same. And it was like we had never, ever lost our friendship. That kind of in contrast when we moved back to the States and my sister would go to school and they actually would tell her to put her head on her desk and not say anything. I guess it was very odd for them in Greenville, South Carolina to see this little Black girl. She was light, and you know, sometimes we treat each other differently. So she was light and she spoke with a Scottish accent and they just did not know how to deal with it. I don't know if that ever traumatized her, but again, my parents were military and you found out what you had to do and you got it done. That's what we did. I wound up graduating in Sanford, Florida, Seminole High School. Now, when I got to Seminole High School, remember, I just come from Scotland and I thought I was smart. I thought I was something. Well, when I attended Seminole High School, they let me know pretty quick in a hurry. I was just this little short Black girl and I wasn't much of nothing. I was put in the higher classes, but you know, your life and how you handle things has a lot to do with how people treat you. When I was treated like I was someone, I acted like I was someone. When I was treated like I was nothing, I'm sorry to say, I acted as if I was nothing. I didn't shine. I didn't soar. I didn't do and use the gifts that I know that God gave me because I was watching someone else, someone no better than me, no older than me, but they made me feel like I was less than. And that happened a lot. So I graduated Seminole High School in 1973, and I cannot tell you the name of anyone from my high school class. So if there's a high school reunion, I'll never know about it and I will never attend it.
Of course, I went on to the 10th grade to play junior varsity also. And when I played the first game in high school in the 10th grade, Coach Carr put me in the game one time and I ran a touchdown. And there's a clipping that says Jenkins off to the races. And so he took me out that time, and of course I was able to play that first game. And then at Spartanburg High School from the 1979 through 1981, I played high school football. Coach Talley, again, he was there to help me along the way. And then of course, in my senior year, I had a coach by the name of Coach Ellis, Johnson Ellis. And Coach Johnson Ellis, he allowed me, because I won out the position as a running back. And all through that time, from the 10th grade to the 12th grade, I wore the jersey number 33. And I believe I liked that jersey because there was a guy by the name of Carney Norris who played at that time. And Carney was great. And so with that number, I wanted to wear that number. But I was able to go and play football. In my senior year, I remember one outstanding game that I was blessed to run 5 touchdowns at Chase High School. And at that week, we won that game, but I was doing the pep rally. I got the WORD Heisman Trophy Player of the Week during that time. And I remember walking out and I said, wow, I got that. But I was very, very grateful. I was never really strongly outgoing, but very kind of an introvert. But of course, when I got on the football, I put my whole heart into it. My last high school game, we played against Aiken High School. We played against William the Refrigerator Perry. And of course, he went on to become a famous football player for the Chicago Bears. I remember getting the most valuable player in high school as a running back in my senior year. I ran track and I got a MVP trophy, the most valuable player in track. In my senior year in 1981, right before I graduated from high school, I was voted most athletic, a superlative. I remember singing with my sisters, but before I started singing, they were the Jenkins sisters. And then when I came along, they allowed me to sing with them. We became the Jenkins family. And during that time, I was singing with another group. It was a bunch of guys, 5 guys, and we were lead singers, and one would play the bass, and we did that for about a year. But we went from church to church, and of course, singing with my sisters. I enjoyed singing. I became the lead singer with my sisters, and that was a wonderful time.
I graduated from Carver High in 1955, at which time I went and entered Livingstone in 1955. I was in Livingstone for 4 years, and they were really, really enjoyable years. While I was at Livingstone, I joined the Omega Psi Phi fraternity in 1957. I graduated from Livingstone College with a degree in science, and I graduated from Long Island University with a master's degree in public administration in 1983. I have been active in the grad chapter in Westchester in New York. And when I came back to Spartanburg, I found out there was a chapter here, Xi Nu, and I decided that I wanted to be active again. And because my age, the brothers take turns taking me to the meetings and the activities, so I'm very happy to be back and to be active, even if all I do is give them, as they said, the wisdom of the age.
My first real job was monogramming. And if you had your initials on your clothes, you thought you was rich. I would say I probably was the only black person in Spartanburg or South Carolina or North Carolina doing that type work, because I'd done those clothing. I would take them to the stores in Charlotte, North Carolina, Greenville, and Spartanburg. My real job was with the telephone company, Southern Bell. I was always busy there. I worked with the Pioneers. I was their first black person to have a position with the Pioneers. Everyone knew me, but during that time, the telephone company put out a book called The Spirit of the Pioneers of the Bell Telephone Company. And I was the only one with an excerpt in that book from South Carolina. So I feel proud about that. In 1983, before the Bell broke up, we picketed in Spartanburg for 6 weeks. That's without pay. That's when I went to Columbia to work, and then came back to Spartanburg, and then went to Anderson to work.
I joined the Army in 1965. I had been drafted. I volunteered the day before I was drafted, and all the guys that I was drafted with were there at the same time I was at Fort Jackson. So after that, I went to Fort Leonard Wood to carpentry school. I'd asked them to teach me drafting. I'm going to grow up and become an architect. And they sent me to carpentry school. They shipped everybody out to Germany in 2 weeks. I went to Vietnam. Then they had the Tet Offensive. There was an explosion. I got blown up. I was out for about 3 hours. I came to, I'm alive. I'm alive. I came out of the Army with the GI Bill. I made a plan for myself that I know something's wrong with me. I don't know what it is. So I'm going to go back to Spartanburg around the people that knew me, went there for a year, and moved to California.
All the other kids had gone to college 1 week before I was driven down by my mom and dad to Benedict College. I had made an application there and I was accepted. I was scared to death because I didn't know anything about college. And she went into the president's office. When she came out, I had a job in the kitchen, I had a bunch of jobs that I could do, plus got student loans. You know, I felt a little better about myself then. And my major was biology, minor was chemistry, and I wanted to be somewhere in the medical field because I saw those doctors earlier in life, and they seemed to have been doing really well. Did pretty good in college. I made the fraternity I'm in, Omega Psi Phi fraternity. I was president of the student body, and it really surprised me that I did all that because I never really thought about it. And it just so happens that things worked out really good that way.
We played Deals Market, and I pitched, and I was in the 10th grade, and we ended up beating Deals Market. After we beat him, Coca-Cola had won about 6 years in a row. So Mr. Deals started putting all the best players together and getting in the White League over there at Berry Field. So he called the team Deals Market, and players like James Talley, Boyd Talley, Jesse Carter, Charles Garrett, Theodore Williams, and also Beaky Simpson, what his name was, Freddie Simpson, and you got James Jenkins, Archie Lee Means, and Tim Hosley. He played for Coca-Cola. He ended up going, he had a tryout with Detroit Tigers Farm Club, which me and Beaky Simpson supposed to been going with him, but we got left. And we blame Bill Pearson for not picking us up. But at the same time, a fellow supposed to been picking us up didn't show up. So we got left behind on that deal. Well, in 1978, I was pitching for Lee Textile. And I was supposed to have been pitching that night, but they didn't have but 9 ball players. So they let Arvin Taylor pitch, and they put me in right field. If anybody ever played ball, they think right field, they think they put the weak outfielder in right field, but right field actually the hardest field to play. And so that night I was playing, and the ball was popped up the right field. I was running in at the ball, and the second baseman came out. He didn't see me and I didn't see him, and I stepped on top of his foot and I popped my ankle. And I got ready to get up. They said, "Don't move." And they heard me, they called the ambulance, and they took me to get surgery. So they got Dr. Henderson, the doctor for Spartan High School. And they said I had torn ligaments on both ankles and knocked my ankle completely out the socket. So I had to have surgery, and they put the cast all the way up to my hip, even though I broke my ankle. They kept that on there for 2 weeks, and then they cut it down below my kneecap. But at the same time, they didn't want my ankle to touch the floor, period. And I kept it on there for 8 weeks. And after they took the cast off, I had to go through therapy, and I had to learn to walk over again.
Because of the actions we took at Carver, the sit-ins, the boycotts, I'm actually going to take over the school district office. We wanted to make a difference. Went to jail, went to trial, and we prevailed. Carver became the only school that I know of in the state of South Carolina where at that point of integration, the actual school colors, the mascot, the alma mater, all that was changed. We followed our assistant principal, Mr. Dewey Tullis, one of the student leaders, Mr. J. Wayne Watson, and Mr. Tyrone Ollie.
I went to college about 1.5 years in Spartanburg, and then I moved to Atlanta, Georgia. And there I got a job that allowed me to travel. And that was a great experience for me because I needed to travel, but I wanted to travel, but I wanted it to be in a controlled environment. And so I was able to do that, and I traveled for many, many years and just had a wonderful life, a single life, no children, just a great single life. I'm very, very appreciative of the time that I had when I was traveling. And then in 1980, I married a guy in California, and the relationship was abusive. And he was very abusive to me, and he threatened to kill me. And I wrote a book about my life because of that night that he threatened to kill me. The Lord saved me that night from him. And I wrote a book called Content of Character. And it is a story that was based on Dr. King's speech. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And that was the first book that I wrote, the story of my life, which was later adapted to the screen as a movie. And so therein my movie career started.
Guess what? First time ever flying an airplane. Went to Gary, Indiana for the pageant and flew into O'Hare. I went there, got lost, ended up in the basement. Guess what? They found me. I got with the other girls. And when I got there were these host families who actually were going to take care of each girl who represented a state. And there was this beautiful woman holding up the Spartanburg Herald-Journal with my picture on it. Miss Black South Carolina is coming to the Miss Black America pageant. Mrs. Mary Bussey. She was my host mother. She and her husband. They never had children. I stayed with them. Cars picked us up every morning to rehearsals. We rehearsed. It was a wonderful time. Had a few little hiccups. Got there. My song was going to be Make It Easy on Yourself by Dionne Warwick. And they said, well, maybe you need to choose something else. I was going to do The Way We Were. And they said, you can't do that. I panicked. I called back home and I said, I need to do another song. They called me and said, you can do that song because the other 4 girls, they're not going to do it. I did the song. My clothes, I had people who supported me in Spartanburg. People like Kay Woodward, who took me to, back in the day, the Standard, so I could have good-looking suits and nice-looking shoes. I had people like Mrs. Ellen C. Watson, who helped me get my long formal dress. She also said, Geraldine, I'm going to get your dress for you because we want you to look good. She made sure I had the right gown, the right dress. We had people who donated things, and my mother was a hard-working woman, but we didn't have that kind of money. So there were people who rallied together in Spartanburg saying they're going to help this girl do what she needs to do. So I went on to the pageant. When I got there was Miss Black North Carolina. I got this big bouquet of red roses, and it said to my contestant, and she grabbed them, and I said, okay. And she looked at it and it said, congratulations, Miss Black South Carolina, your Senator Strong Thurman. So when I competed in the Miss Black America pageant, I became the first runner-up to Miss Black America, Gary, Indiana. It was a great time. Remember, my mother raised 7 children. We didn't have a whole lot of money. I wasn't trying to be a beauty queen. I was trying to launch my career as being a singer, maybe theater or what have you. But that's how it all happened.
I started school, I told you, when I was 5. So in May of 1973, graduated high school, had my birthday in August, turned 16, and started Seminole Junior College. Remember how I told you my parents were strict? So, did I drive to college? I did not. My father drove me to college. They picked me up after the last class. I may as well have been in high school, except that during the day at Seminole Junior College, I met people who thought that I was good. They thought that I was smart. They thought that I had talent. I didn't know it, but they said it, and so I believed it. And I majored in theater, and I was in Raisin in a Sun. I was in that play, I was Beneatha, and I got rave reviews in the newspaper. Oh yeah, I was moving up. Well, graduated on time. In 1975, my father retired. We moved back to Greenville, South Carolina, and I started college at the University of South Carolina in Columbia. I read an article that said, sometimes if you're short, when you get some freedom, you might grow taller. So at 5 feet, I thought that when I moved to USC in Columbia and I was free of my parents, I was going to grow taller, but did not. And actually that's kind of good because you may not can tell it, but I talk a lot. And because I was so small, they let me say a lot of things and do a lot of things, and I got away with it. They would just smile at me as opposed to me having to face any of the consequences of my mouth. I was trained that in 2.5 to 3 years, whatever trouble I had gotten in, I would not have to bear the consequences of, because we moved. We moved, and that was kind of a bad training, but that is how I lived my life.
And from there, when I graduated from high school in 1981, I went to a school called Lees-McRae College. It was a 2-year school at a town called Banner Elk, North Carolina. All of my sisters and my family took me up there in January, and when we got to the top of the mountain, it was snowing crazy. So they had to come in and hurry and make my bed up and leave because they would have been snowed in. So they left me there, and I was grateful to be able to go to college because Mom had always told us that we would not be able to get a ditch digging job unless you got a college degree. She told us that constantly, and I heard what she told me. And so at Lees-McRae, I went on to have a football scholarship. But the first time in practice that week going on the field, I was hit in the back and I was almost paralyzed. And so went to the hospital, and of course, finally, my parents, they came up to get me from the hospital. I had to drop out of school that first semester because I was hit in the back. And so Mom, when I came home, Mom said, you can go back to school if you want to, or you can get a job. I said, no ma'am, I want to go back to school because I know I need my college degree. So I went back to school, and I was blessed to sing with a group called the Highlanders. And singing with the Highlanders, I was the only black man in the group there, a lead singer. We would sing 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, rock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, rock. You're gonna rock, rock, rock tonight. And so we went all over North Carolina singing and promoting Lees-McRae College. My mother, when during the snow, she sent me a pair of brown boots. I'll never forget, I think I still have those boots. And I'll never forget that. And she would always send me a letter. That letter would say, son, hang in there. You're gonna make it, praise God. She would always send me that. And that $10, she would always give me a $10 bill in the envelope. Hang in there, son. Things won't always be the way that they are. And so singing with the Highlanders, also working in the cafeteria, and then at nighttime I had to work in the student center just to have enough money in order to be able to go to school. But I'm thankful for my mama, how she prayed for me, how she encouraged me, and that's how I was able to stay and finish my college and get my college degree. But in the year of 1984, God blessed me to walk across the stage and I got my associate's degree, and I was so grateful.
I graduated from Livingstone College in 1959. I went to New York, where I gained employment at Einstein College of Medicine as a lab technician. After working for several years at Einstein, I was drafted into the Army. I was in the Army from 1961 to 1963, at which time I came out and went back to Einstein to work as a lab technician. While working at Einstein, a gentleman in Westchester invented an automatic machine for doing lab tests. We managed to get the first automatic machine, but when it stopped working, the technicians who were running the equipment kept quitting and saying it couldn't be done and it was a failure. So I volunteered to work the machine. What I did when everybody went home was went back into the lab, because the lab was closed at that time. So I had an opportunity to take the equipment apart, see how it worked when it was being run, and to clean it and make sure it was all and ready to go. The equipment was working and doing 60 tests an hour, as opposed to a technician 20 or 30 a day. So I was running ahead of the game. Doctors came from all over the hospital to see my machine. And one of the doctors who came in was the chairman of biochemistry. He asked me what I thought of it. I told him that this machine will make sure that we got the test back to the patient in a timely manner. I was appointed a supervisor. My next thing was to take an exam to be a junior chemist for the city of New York. I was given a faculty appointment as an instructor in biochemistry. I was then appointed supervisor for the entire chemistry lab, and I was appointed the department administrator for the laboratories. I worked as the department administrator from 1961 to 1999.
But but while I was there in Inman, I did join the NAACP. It was time to fight this segregation. It was in Inman. Inman was segregated the whole time I was there. Inman was a town when I was there. They had several restaurants. We were not allowed to eat in the front of the restaurant. We mostly just buy ice cream. They had several ice cream shops, but we would have to go in the back to be served. And I moved to Spartanburg, and I still work with the NAACP. It wasn't easy going to planning meetings. I was on the executive board. My first job was to make sure that the people knew how to fill out the forms when they would go to vote. At one time, I copied all the names of people in Spartanburg County that was registered to vote, even though some of the candidates would come to us and ask us to vote for them, and they paid money. They took the money anyway, but they didn't know who we were voting for. In working with the NAACP, we had to use strategies, and we mostly met at churches because we needed God's help. The churches we met at were all in Spartanburg County. There wasn't a lot of problems in Spartanburg, and I felt like Spartanburg said, we don't want a burned down city, and we had all these meetings about how they were going to change Spartanburg. Most of the time, I would be the only black lady there. Your ministers always supported the meetings. We met with the other officials there in Spartanburg, trying to make Spartanburg a better place to live. One night, the policeman stopped my brother-in-law and my sister-in-law, and they beat him unrecognizable. And he was in the hospital, and we had to meet with the policemen about police brutality. Maybe 10 years later, this same person that I'm defending ends up killing my husband in 1972. Now, I have a street named after me called Alma Bird Lane. I had to go through channels to get that lane named after me. I've been living on Baltimore Street since 1960. Done many things there for the neighborhood and the community. And I let it be known that if I'd done that much work, I could have a street named after me. So in 2009, they named Summer Place, which is at the end of my street, and they put the name up Alma Bird Lane. B-Y-R-D, no feathers, Alma Bird Lane. I get so many people asking me, how did you get the street named after you? Just being good, G-O-O-D. That's how I got it, the street named after me. That's it, that's it.
While at Benedict College, I met my life partner. I met my wife in college, and when I first saw her walking across the campus, some friends of mine who are very close, one of them is my best man, I said, I'm gonna marry that lady. I didn't even know her then, but I saw her, and that was it, But anyway, her name is Janie Hopper Clink Scales, and now Hill. And I did very well in college. Graduated 1966. My principal, Mr. Emerson B. Coleman, came down to the school recruiting, and he recruited me to be a teacher. They could use my credentials to teach. I taught school at Cummings Street, my old junior high school, for 3 years before getting an invitation to go to Howard. After 4 years there at Howard, I received the doctorate of dental surgery. I think this is the one. This is the one, that's the degree, but I got the degree, so, and it's been with me since.
And on the back of that little newspaper, in small print in the corner, it says, they're protesting the war at the University of California at Berkeley. I could go to that school and get an education and become politically aware at the same time. I am going to that school. I was accepted into Berkeley the spring of 1976 as a junior. In my first class, a professor had illegally given the class over to a graduate student that told me, "You are not Cal quality." And I said, "I know that, but I'm here." And the student went out of the way to make sure that I didn't get by her. So I finished undergrad, went and saw Doc, explained to him that I'd gotten my degree in architecture. He said, "Well, you always had that drive." Went to grad school, met Sim Vanderen, one of the most famous architects in the world, who's just always ahead of the curve and thinking about how to do sustainable architecture. He was my inspiration. I finished in 1985, and it took me until 1989 to write 2 theses. They told me, "No, if we give you 2 master's degrees, you're going to do 2 different theses."
I was inducted in the Hall of Fame October the 18th, 2012, and I really enjoyed it. And everywhere I go, I have kids that come up to me, which now probably 45 years old or older, saying they remember me. They were a bat boy, and I can't remember them. And even on the Hall of Fame, they want to say that I played slow pitch softball, but I actually started off coaching them. It's all in the paper. All you got to do is say Strawberry ASA Hall of Fame. Or you can say Theodore Williams, ASA Hall of Fame. Don't care where you at, my name will come up. I was working Scoba, and a friend of mine came out, had a new plant manager come in. He took the trophies and things, threw them in the trash. My friend came over and got me and said, man, that man done threw the trophies in the trash right there. I said, I got it out, and I went up to the office with it. I said, can I have this trophy? He said, I don't care what you do with it. So I took the trophy, I had it restored. He didn't know that on that trophy, the last 3 names on that trophy was inducted into the Hall of Fame. And I restored the trophy, and that happened 2010. My mom, Savannah Williams, I took her everywhere she wanted to go, even though they wanted me to play fast pitch softball up there in Sherman, North Carolina on the weekend, but they was gonna pay me to play. But at the same time, I took my mama to the grocery store, and we spent the whole day on Saturday, all day long, shopping and going to flea markets. And my mother ended up getting Alzheimer's. So I stayed there with her. Sometimes I'll be up all night, and then I will go to work. When I go to work, I sometimes go in the restroom and get some sleep. But I still stood right there with her, and till the day she passed away.
I give special thanks to my mother and father for the sacrifices they made over the years, for the direction they lent, for the encouragement, for the building up of our lives between my sister and myself. The experience I had at Wofford College was immeasurable and impacting. We had had one black student to live on campus. The first black student was Albert Gray, who went to Wofford College to integrate the school in 1964. I didn't go until 1969, but when we went, we were the first group of 7 blacks on campus who went to live on campus. Mr. Gray had stayed there a semester and he went into the military. During that period of time, I had the opportunity to be the first black male intern in the office of U.S. Senator Ernest F. Hollins, and I went to pre-law at Wofford. I graduated from Wofford College in 1973. I was very fortunate to have been named the who's who among students in American colleges and universities, something the college never anticipated. And then had the opportunity to be admitted to the law school. I worked at the Attorney General's office as his law clerk, Travis Medlock. That all prepared me as I went through law school. And everybody kept encouraging me to become that lawyer that I needed to be, and it happened. I graduated from the University of South Carolina School of Law in 1977. I became the first black lawyer to be a member of the Spartanburg County Bar Association. But Spartanburg was changing, and we were getting together, and we were balancing things out racially, socially, economically, politically, and I wound up coming back to Spartanburg. A lot of people said, why are you coming back to Spartanburg? You can do a whole lot better in other places. I said, yeah, I can do a whole lot better in other places, but Spartanburg would do better because I came home. Because, you know, in the Spartanburg, I know we need people who understand and appreciate, underwrite, undergird people, even who find themselves foul of the law. That's my job now, and I just take great pride in knowing that Spartanburg opened its arms to us and gave us an opportunity to be what we needed to be and to help others become what they can be.
In 1995, I had written another book because I did not want to be what's called a one-hit wonder. And so I wrote a novel called Rich Man. And in 1995, we published Rich Man. Now, for all the work that I had done and the books that I had written, when I came home to Spartanburg, the first African-American mayor of Spartanburg awarded me the key to the city of Spartanburg in 1995, and that was Mayor James E. Talley. But it didn't stop there. In 2018, Dr. Simone Brown, a local author in Dallas, Texas, asked me to do an adaptation of her book, which was called Beneath the Scar. It was very lightly based on her own life, and we did that movie in 2018. In 2019, the South Carolina House of Representatives and the city of Spartanburg proclaimed February 15th Cynthia Reed Wills Day, which of all the honors that I've had, I'm so grateful for that. I can only remember the little poor skinny black girl from Arkwright, and I think about that all the time and how I would have a day in this city, which is just the highlight of my life. In 2022, I wrote, directed, and produced a faith-based movie called It's Only a Test, and it was the modern-day story of the biblical character of Job. In 2023, my husband Lonnie was inspired to come back, to give back to the city of Spartanburg, and we did the first two of this documentary series called Changing Times, The Spartanburg I Know. I also altered the Black History title to Black Excellence Month because there are so many great African Americans. There were great ones who did things before, but there are many great ones that are here right now that have done great things.
I came back home. I was still in college. There were lots of things that were going on. I was making all kinds of places to go and speak and motivating young kids and young women. But I also wanted to have my own band. And so I had a band. I've probably been with about 6 or 7 bands in my life. Out of those bands, we've played locally, regionally. So I performed with several bands. I did a blues band, Cocktail Frank, and I did another band called the Grand Band. We were the house band. We played, we played 3-4 nights a week. I was still working. I worked in radio. I was one of the first girls to work in the first Black radio station in Spartanburg, WASC Radio, which used to be country and western, by the way. And I had that band. We played, we performed, we traveled. The Spartanburg I Know is a Spartanburg that was good to me, regardless of all the ups and downs that most people may think that they have because either they don't have money, they don't live in a big house, or what have you. I married and stayed married and am still married, been married for 48 years. Spartanburg has been good to me. It's been good to me, it's been good to my family. And there are those people in Spartanburg who, may not feel that same way. But the Spartanburg I know was a good time for me. It was a good time for me, and I've been able to do some other things for other children. My children are doing other things for other children because they're grown and they have their own children. So the Spartanburg I Know is a place that is not monolithic. Some people don't understand what that word means. That word means when people want to group everybody the same. And we're not a monolithic society. Black people aren't monolithic. We come in different shapes, sizes, different forms, different thought process. And for me, I had a different thought process from some others. So the Spartanburg I Know, it's my home. This is where I was born and raised. This is probably where I died.
Somewhere around 1983. I wound up moving back to Greenville. I was married, divorced, had my young son, moved back home with my parents. I finally got a job at Dun & Bradstreet. I thought I was on my way up in the business world. And then I got a call about a job at State Farm Insurance. They wanted a field claims adjuster for a fire company. They hadn't had an outside adjuster before, and they certainly hadn't had a female adjuster. So I applied, and so I took that job. And it was good. But you know, when you work for a corporation, after about the 5th year or so, you've got to start making plans and seeing how you can move up what you're going to do. And at that time, the opportunities were, 1, go into management with State Farm, which meant and still does mean being very mobile. I was a single parent at that time with my oldest son, Ken, and I was not prepared to be mobile. The next option was to be an agent. When I tell you, owning my own business in the financial insurance industry was something that was never, ever, never, ever in my sights. But again, trying to follow what my dad said and what he instilled in me, I went for the opportunity. And then being the quirky person that I am, I sought advice from some other people, and one gentleman in my circle looked at me, and in all honesty, he said, "Who would buy insurance from you?" Psst, that did it. I was gonna sell insurance. I was gonna show him and anybody else that plenty of people would buy insurance from me. In Spartanburg, that's where it wound up being. And it has been a very blessed and joyous journey. When I mentioned that I was going to Spartanburg to people who lived in Greenville, it is so funny. You can't go to Spartanburg. The Spartanburg opportunity was, at that time I think the company was looking to be more diverse, because when I opened my doors in Spartanburg, you could go toward Greenville and find agents that looked like me. But coming toward Spartanburg and all of the surrounding counties, there were none. So when Gloria Boyder and myself became agents, and we opened our doors officially May 1, 1990, there were no female agents, there were no black agents.
And from there, later, I was called into the ministry to preach the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ. Of course, I didn't want to preach the gospel, and I'll tell you, I had a rough time, and I had told God, I said, "Lord, when I get 40, I'll preach." But of course, I was about 22, 23 years old, 24, and of course, the Lord, it was like I was arrested, almost like the Apostle Paul on the road to Damascus. And of course, I had a vision. Finally, my mother said, "Son, you better surrender to the Lord." And of course, after we got called into the ministry, I was able to preach my trial sermon, 1986, at Mount Pleasant Baptist Church, and I'm grateful for that. And I went on to pastor, be ordained as a pastor at First Baptist Church of Fair Forest, where the Lord has blessed me to be there now going on 36 years as the senior pastor. And I'm so grateful that my wife, she is my co-pastor, but she helps me in Bible study. She helps me with all the things that I need to do. I could not work full time and be able to pastor concerning if she didn't do all the things behind the scene. And many people have come to know Jesus Christ as Lord and as Savior. And that's what it's all about, that we might hear the Lord say, "Well done, good and faithful servant."
I'd like to thank Wofford College and Dr. Dwayne Pruitt for partnering with us to present this documentary series, Changing Times, The Spartanburg I Know. The Spartanburg Public Libraries for all they've done for us. My wife, Cynthia Reed Wills, for her tireless effort in making this documentary series a success. And the 2025 Black Excellence Award honorees for their participation. And we hope you enjoyed the show this evening. Thank you.